All right, welcome back for our second match here, Week 6, March of the Machine League. We are in the home stretch. We have our second match of the evening. Bob is here with me. He's going to be looking at Daniel G, and I'm going to be looking at Caleb. So both of these players are doing very well. They're both high up. They're both high up in the top 8. Daniel has he was first coming into the week, but now he's I believe third. But what's he got in his hand there?
We've got our Fang the Fangbearer is going to deploy here. Also, the very powerful artifact, the Ozolith. And then as we sort of round out with a Preening Champion and a War Historian, we're going to work our way up to a Hidetsugu and Kairi. So we're looking for that black splash to work out for us as well.
Yeah, I believe he's still only at 5 losses, and just an astounding amount of rares for quality rares for the very few losses that he has. Last time we saw him a few weeks ago, he was running a white red deck splashing for Brutaclad and Ojutai and Zergo. But looks like he's gone into a green multicolor mode here.
I think as you get a little bit later into the weeks, particularly in this set, you're just going to see people who have the efficient answers. And so therefore, earlier in, you could probably try to aggro some people out or try to kind of get some things going that way. But now you really need to focus a little bit more on accruing value, making sure that you can compete with some of these really efficient decks as we're seeing.
Yeah, I don't think the aggro decks can be good enough with how good some of these, Sultai, in the Sultai realm, green blue, green black, blue black decks have been. Caleb's running a Grixis deck here, so not sure if the red's a splash or if it's full on Grixis. He's got 2 red gold cards in his hand in the Joyful Storm Sculptor and Brutaclad, the Telchor Engineer. He's got Nezumi Informant, Skittering Surveyor, and Ayara, Widow of the Realm. So a couple of nice rares there. Looks like he's just gonna transform his area list here while the shields are down per se.
We're going to continue to see people trying to accrue as much value as they can. So when you have an opportunity to flip over your thing to get some more value, let's do it.
Yeah, he said next turn I can just play my Skittering Surveyor, get another land. But for this turn, I don't want to get blown up by an instant here. Let me just flip it while I have the chance. So kind of like an underutilized thing. I know me myself, like I usually just transform my cards like when I when I have the time later. I don't like actively try and do it when I have cards to play, but he wanted to make sure he got his cards worth out of that Sky.
Alternatively, if he's looking at his hand and saying, I can't do anything against this Ozolith, maybe he kind of feels like he's got to search and dig for an answer to it. Otherwise, he's going to get run over by a 4/4, 6/6, 8/8 flyer that's just going to keep growing every turn.
Yeah, the only answer I could think of that might be in his deck, I mean, there's in the colors that he's playing, I mean, Temporal Cleansing can at least get it off the battlefield for a couple turns. And if he's playing Shatter the Source, that'll do it as well. So he's trying to Gloomfang Mauler here for turn. Looks like he's going to just go for Skittering Surveyor, get a Swamp, and then either hold up the Cybo Cryptomancer that he's drawn or cast his Nezumi Informant. But he's in danger of potentially falling behind here on board if Daniel can deploy some more threats. And, trying to block this Preening Champion, even if he puts he's held up Cyber Cryptomancer here, or potentially Gloomfang Mauler cycling. But, that Preening Champion can get way bigger than the Skyclave Invader, even with a counter on it.
For sure. Now we see here that he just drew his Invasion of Zendikar, which is a great card and something that's going to be able to allow him to cast his Hidetsugu and Kairi if he wants to, but he's then going to have to take a turn off from the Ozolith. So he's debating, do I want to activate my Ozolith? Do I want to make sure I can cast these later spells? And it looks like he's thinking, I'm the beatdown. So we're going to go for the aggro play. We're going to continue to try to pressure life totals and see where things go from here.
Yeah, I think he's saying, I'm just going to do this until Caleb tells me I can't. Because if he doesn't tell me I can't, the game is going to end very fast.
Absolutely.
And as long as he still has other things to do, this is a totally fine way to go about it. So he's
and this also holds up the Tandem Takedown in his hand as well. And so even if he doesn't activate the Ozolith next turn, he could end up casting that Tandem Takedown for the +1/+0 and swinging for lethal, assuming that Caleb doesn't block.
And just as a note here, this War Historian has basically held back Caleb from being able to attack at all. Normally, you play your Skyclave Aerialist, you get in with it a couple times, you flip it, maybe then you use it to block once it's a 2/4. But this 3/3 reach has just been sitting there saying, no, Caleb's got a bunch of good cards in his hand, but none of them are removal. So he's gonna have to hope to get something off the top of the deck here. He's gonna cycle the Gloomfang Mauler, obviously not doing it here.
Yeah.
And he's drawn another land. So he can deploy his Brutaclad Telchor Engineer, but none of that, stops this flyer from decimating him.
Yeah, and that means that assuming that Daniels goes for it, he's got the kill in hand, right? Just a sorcery speed tandem takedown, kill off the flyer, and that's the game.
Well, he's also got the kill with the Ozolith on board already. So
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lethal.
He's got to
lethal attack, but
he's got to remove the blocker, right? Somehow, and so that tandem takedown allows him to sort of hold up something else in his hand. He doesn't really have it, but it could make it look that way.
Caleb's kept up the Cyber Cryptomancer, which will allow his creature to survive a removal, but not to survive a chump block next turn. So, Caleb's thinking maybe I get to stay alive. Maybe this Ayara can start gaining me some life with the trigger. Maybe, just maybe, there's a way to crawl out of this and I find the removal. But what else is Daniel holding in hand there? You said Invasion, Hidetsugu.
Yeah, he's got the 2/1, the order
Okay.
so it's called, and then he also just picked up a Sandstalker Moloch. So nothing amazingly impactful, but certainly some very good, efficient threats that he could deploy if he needed to.
So it looks like he's base blue-green then, with splashing
very much
around,
so.
Splashing around for some good stuff.
Haven't seen any red cards quite yet, but obviously that Hidetsugu, that means there's a swamp laying around there somewhere.
Yeah, well, with Invasion of Zendikar, he can get the swamp and the island to cast it, so he's not drawn anything here. He can play Nezumi Informant and see a card in Daniel's hand before the game spirals to an end. I mean, he could use the Ayara to gain some life, so he's not like factually dead, but he's the life gain's not going to be able to keep up with these ridiculous swings from the
certainly
champion.
not.
Yeah, he could sacrifice the bloated processor, or gain him 3. So Ayara, you don't want to be using this ability strictly to stay alive. I mean, it's better than not having the option of doing it, but
I'd rather be alive than dead. You mean?
Yeah, sure. Why not? So a bunch of good cards in his hand, but nothing that affects the board here. Daniel's just going to block with his Death Touch creatures, and it's going to trade. So, of note, like I said, Caleb does have a 5-drop and 6-drop in his hand, so he can sack those and, gain some chunks of life. But he's going to need something a little bit better than that.
Yeah, I think he's got one turn realistically to draw something.
Yeah, so Daniel said it might mean I don't cast many spells, but I'm just gonna dominate the board with this flyer and make him have an answer. Then after that, I'll just have all the spells I need. And here comes the Moloch here to draw a card.
Like 4 lands. 2 forests, 2 islands. What do you want? we picked an island.
Sometimes it just works out that way. You get all the lands off the top of your deck, and you find the spells. So I think looks like he was mousing over Ayara, giving it a quick read there, making sure.
We're picking up a stasis field.
It does have a lot of words.
Yep, a stasis field means it's going to end up getting down. I'm sure in response, Caleb's going to sack something to stay alive.
It'll have to be the 5-drop. That's the only option.
But even still, though, then he puts counters on the Ozolith, and I think that means it was 5 mana. Never mind, I thought it was 3 toughness. No, 5 mana means we're good.
It's the mana cost, so pretty nice there.
And so that means that there's no point in putting counters on the Printing Champion. Let's go ahead and take this opportunity just to deploy the Invasion of Zendikar. We're going to go get a Plains and a Swamp. Okay. So a full 5 colors coming out of Daniel's deck.
I mean, we saw before Latte had a black-red 5 color, which is an odd starting point for a splashing deck. But, he might have something similar. Green-blue with, maybe 5 or 6 cards of very 5 colors.
Green-blue very much feels to me like the 5 color sort of deck. I know it's supposed to be the transform deck, but it just makes it so simple and easy to kind of splash some of those items.
Caleb's drawn a card I like very much, but he's gonna have to cast it here, the Phyrexian Gargantua, to
go down to 2.
Being at 4, being at 2 on this board, there's not too much difference.
Yeah, it doesn't really much matter the difference. Yeah, I mean, what is he going to be able to pick up? Ifara's Dispersal is really the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, could be, or maybe something from Offset, but
oh, sure.
There's a few options there. we don't know exactly where all these players have been for their journeys. Well, but again, they don't have too many losses, so they haven't been offset too much. So he says, you know what? I'm just gonna make a bunch of. I'm just gonna make a bunch of tokens here. I'm gonna turn my 1/1 tokens into 2/1s and try and stay alive. But we know that's not gonna work.
Yeah, I think it's
Why not just
sort of
play
the bluff.
why not just play the Gargantua? Maybe you pick up something.
I would imagine it's just the bluff, right? And trying to play against it. But
Yeah.
if I'm anybody in this situation, you have to call that bluff, and then you get quote blown out by just redeploying your printing champion. So it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. So so Caleb, like I said, look pretty straightforward green, black, blue base, but quite a bit of red. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
quite call it a splash, but it's the third color here. Yeah, he's got a
Yeah,
couple of real nice red cards there. He's got a Chandra actually, so it's a good
looks
one.
like we're green blue, which is kind of exactly as expected. We've got Atraxa, Praetor's Voice, Zergo and Ojutai, Brutaclad, 2 Invasion of Eldraine, a
Sure.
a Glissa, a Hidetsugu. There are some powerful cards coming in with the splashes here.
So it looks like Sultai base then, perhaps.
Well, there's only 3 black cards, or 4, I suppose, with the Atraxa. So, you can kind of call it Sultai. You can kind of call it what you want here. But realistically, it's going to be green-blue with those 3 total splashes amongst probably about 5 or 6 cards.
Yeah, I seem to be one of the few that have resisted the urge to splash all over the place here in the later weeks. We've seen a lot of people splashing around.
Yeah, I see 2 Blighted Burgeonings. I see a Fleetwheel Racer. I mean, he's got, and what I see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dual lands plus the Invasion of Zendikar. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff going on here, able to be, fixed for. So that certainly helps that.
Yeah, so the backbone of Caleb's deck here, like in the early slots, he has 2 Halo Foragers, 2 Breeding Champions, 2 Nizumi Informants, the Invasion of Amonkhet, so the 2 premium blue-black uncommons. Those sort of make up the base of his deck that can get him to the late game, where he can drop a Chandra, a Gyruda, a Brutaclad, Grimgrin. So he's got a top end to be feared as well. So both of them have some heavy hitters. Yeah. And he has, like I said, it's more than a splash, but he has a few red cards in there. Jury, Demon Bolt, Voldaran Thrillseeker, Furnace Host Charger, the Land Cycler. So he's thinking about bringing in a Lithomantic Barrage, Disturbing Conversion maybe, Volcanic Spider, all cards he's dragged in. He hasn't dragged anything out yet, but these are the ones he's thinking about.
Yeah, and I think if you're splashing red, those are all cards that I think you really want to kind of keep on the high list of things you might board in. But they all seem kind of low impact, except for when you really need them. So I like them being in the sideboard this late into the season.
Yeah, I see a card in the sideboard. I think a lot of people would be splashing here. Kaya the Inexorable from, I believe that's the one from.
So the 6 mana War of the Spark, or the 7 mana one?
It's the 5. It's the 5 mana one from Kaldheim. Basically, if you ever get to ultimate, it could just recast itself.
Yeah,
the
very powerful stuff.
Protects a creature, sort of turns it into a 1/1 when it dies, and the minus just exiles anything. So I think a lot of people
very
would be
powerful
wanting to splash that. He has a Skittering Surveyor. He has a red-white dual land and a blue-white dual land at his access, but he says, you know what, 3 colors is very much enough here. I'm good.
Yeah, we'll see if that's going to be good enough, right? Because obviously that sort of power sitting in your sideboard, you question it a little bit of like, well, should I do it? And if the mana works out right, I remember we saw James S. here in a couple of weeks ago. He had a very powerful deck that was really shaky on mana. And in game 2 in his match, the mana worked out fine. And it seemed nigh unstoppable. I mean, his deck seemed to just overrun everything.
Yeah.
But obviously in game 1...
at the top of the standings. So.
Right. But in game 1, he really struggled with mana, and it didn't seem like he did anything. So looks like
that's always the fear.
Oh yeah, it looks like Daniel's going to throw back 7 and take a 6 that's pretty similar. However, in this case, we've got 4 colors of mana, a Blighted Burgeoning, and 2 Meeting of the Minds. Right. So definitely some
not a bad mulligan here.
Yeah, it seems very good on 6.
Yeah, so Caleb's got a Preening Champion. He's got Ayara. He's got an Island. He's got an Ichor Drinker, and he's got 2 red cards, which you can't cast. One of them being Chandra Hope's Beacon. So
All right.
not quite there yet to cast them, but it's interesting to see how people approach deck building. I think there's kind of like two types of players. There's like the types of players that their goal is like how fast can I get my deck consistent and get to 2 colors,
Yes.
you know? And there's other people like, how can I just maximize my power level? How can I just play the most powerful cards without my mana base being like completely unfunctioning? And I think it's kind of just, and I'm not, it's never been conclusive which one's better than the other. Depends on the set a lot of the time, but this is definitely a set where you can splash around and play a bunch of colors.
Yeah.
Whereas the last league, which I know you're new to our server, but in All Will Be One League, it was quite the opposite.
I think it's got to be set dependent. I also would argue it's probably even pool dependent, right? There are some pools that are just their power is spread out between 3 or 4 colors, and you might never actually get to a consistently powerful 2-color deck. And so you have to sort of focus on some of that fixing in order to make it work, which obviously allows you for some matches that you're just going to sort of forfeit. But then in theory, you're going to win other matches because you have that power level. But then on the flip side, if your pool is got like, let's say, a higher consistency of uncommon power, and instead of some of these big splashy rares, those are the pools I would imagine you want to really drill down and hone into those uncommons. You're, if in this set, likely going to be in black, blue, or red, white, or something similar. You really want to make sure that those things are being maximized.
Yeah.
So we see a bunch of dorks here on Caleb's side. He's got a 2/2, a 1/1, a 1/1. This is all great stuff to be sacking to Ayara.
Yeah, however, his hand is just uncastables. He has 3 red cards and a second Ayara. So, of note, if he ever flips the first Ayara, he can play the other one.
I love that about
I guess they combo with each other because you could you could sack the thing you bring back from the graveyard to the to the unflipped one. But I mean, I guess that's kind of it's a pipe.
And a lot of the times on the backside of this IR, a lot of times when these effects sort of say if this card were to go back to the graveyard, like an Unearth, which we remember from Bro, it would get exiled no matter what. This IR is not that way. If it goes to the graveyard, it just goes back there and everything's normal. Yeah. So very powerful recursion effects.
If it's still on the battlefield at your end step, it'll get exiled. But any other place it ends up, it still
just stays there.
So pretty poor draw here with the Gloomfang Mauler. I mean, he gets another swamp, but that's not the issue here.
Arguably, he's got a very powerful board. I mean, like sacking the Ichor Drinker to bring that thing back, dealing a damage, sacking the Nezumi Informant to deal 2 damage. I mean, he's got what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 damage on board at the moment.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's gonna have to make do with that because he's not gonna be casting too many spells. If this Ayara does get removed, which I assume Daniel will remove it if he is able. He does have the backup one, which
you're right.
You never expect the second copy of a rare.
Never. Right now, Daniel's currently sitting on. He had the Meeting of Minds. Wicked Slumber really is the closest removal spell. However, now the 3 cards he's just recently drawn include a Brutaclad he's going to deploy, and Omen Honk are a little bit low power right now, but then also a Stasis Field. So if he ever feels like that IR is getting a little bit too big for Daniel's britches here, that Stasis Field should be able to take care of it. And awkwardly enough, that's one of the only removal spells that means that the second Ayara will have to legend rule the first because the name still stays the same.
Yeah, this Omen, not Omen Ogre, but this Brutaclad just added 8, just turned 3 power of tokens into now 8 power of tokens. So just really, really good interactions with the incubator tokens with Brutaclad, but really just any tokens, treasure or whatever else you got lying around works too, but especially with
not great attacks, right? This 4/3 is perfectly fine. It's pretty easy to chump and sack from Caleb's side, but if he attacks with a 2/1s, he could trade off with an Ichor Drinker, or he could just attack into the Ayara. So although this immediate effect of the Brutaclad isn't really felt, you're gonna see it obviously take over the game very quickly unless Caleb has an answer.
Yeah, and his other red card has can pack a punch too. If he ever gets him out and he has access to Valdera and Thrill Seeker, that can just throw a lot of unexpected damage too. So,
oh yeah, and even if a Stasis Field hits the board, that's a good opportunity for something just to use the value out of that dummy creature.
So, despite not drawing a mountain, he's drawn another Preening Champion. So that should be of use here. He can. I thought he was just going to trade off his current one, perhaps.
I think it's a Preening Champion is a primary card that you want to be sacking with Ayara, right? It's even though it's a 2/2 flyer, it's very good. I don't think that's going to be that heavy on this board right now, and you need to try to burn Daniel out as fast as you can. Now, little does Caleb know, looks like Wicked Slumber is going to come down and possibly Stasis Field after that. And, Daniel's looking to try to alpha strike and close this game out much quicker.
I mean, Brunaclad is a way to win the game quickly. That's
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
card that not only can stabilize the board, but just turns around the game quickly, which is why it's like, an A or
Oh,
A
yeah.
plus or whatever it is. It just
Yeah.
it gives you board presence and it wins you the game fast, which is kind of what you want from your 6-drop rare. You want it to do everything, and looks like it's probably going to be time to at least go on the offensive in some way, shape, or form. So
I think it's pretty clear that obviously once the stasis field targets the IR, you probably want to tap it and sack something to gain 3 and deal 3 and put your opponent at 6. I mean, in theory, that means the Voldar and Thrill Seeker could come down. I'm talking perfect Christmas land, right? A mountain off the top means that you could end up, sacking the other preening champion for another 4 damage, which kind of puts, Daniel down to 2, and then see if you can, make your way in with a little bit more.
Yeah, it looks like he's gonna more or less attack all for the most part here.
I think it's really interesting to see if he leaves anybody back. Looks like that's not going to be the case.
I guess not. No, he's just everyone.
Oh, okay. We leave one back.
Yeah, and that nope. He just says
the Brutaclad back. I don't know.
Says I'm at 6. What's the worst that could happen?
What's the worst that could happen? Because if he attacks all, right, what happens is that Caleb takes all, and then if he rips the mountain, he attacks in for 2 with the 1/1s, and then sacks the preening champion for the last 4 to the Voldar and Thrill Seeker. Now that's obviously again Magic Christmas Land, but you want to make sure that you cover literally the best draws from your opponent.
Yeah, and this is my fear with playing a 3-color deck is just these hands where you're just sitting there with 3 red cards and you're like, well, if I ever draw a mountain, I'm good, but every turn that goes by that I don't, my odds get significantly lower than if I have a 2-color deck where most of my draws are going to be live.
If we had the opportunity to play this matchup 100 times out of 100 or whatever, then maybe Caleb's even favored in it. I don't really know, but the idea of having Chandra in the deck and obviously some of these more powerful cards like the ability to flip Ayara with no life or the Voldar and Thrill Seeker, like some of this stuff, showing up in your deck obviously could be the difference in giving him the edge, assuming the mana works on the on the large number, right? As we do a hypergeometric calculator. The problem is you only get one match. You only get 3 games maybe to make it work, and you got to assume that in the law of large numbers, you're plucking out 3 games that your mana is going to work out, and that just doesn't seem to be the case here.
Yeah, the question in deck building is, I mean, we see him draw Phyrexian Gargantua, which is more or less going to end the game here. He can cast his Ayara and to drop the other one in the graveyard. The question is, when you have 8 red cards in your deck, how much better are those cards, along with the risk of not playing them, than your next best 8 cards that you'll always be able to play, right? Clearly the red cards are better as cards, but the trade-off, how much do you value that trade-off? And no surprise, a lot of people that know me know that I want to get down to 2 colors. I want it's consistency. Even if my last few cards are not going to be as amazing. But,
I mean, he might as well be playing Pot of Greed and the Ace of Spades in his deck. They literally do nothing in them.
Yeah. So here comes Hidetsugu and Kairi to show off more of his wares here.
Are you kidding me? If anybody's watching Daniel's stream, we saw him with an island in hand. He top decks the Hidetsugu and Kairi, and 2 of the 3 cards include Glissa and Atraxa. Oh, sure. So there's no, and of course you notice on Daniel's side of the board, his mana worked out perfectly. He's got all 5 colors should he need them.
So this is why he's 19-5.
Are you kidding me?
Very sensible.
Absolutely.
So it looks like he's about to get his 20th win here, which is pretty close to almost lock for top 8. He's in the high 90s percentage probably right now.
Yeah, I think if he gets 2 more wins before his next 5 losses, he'll be pretty squarely in there for top 8.
So congratulations to Daniel G for the victory here, and we'll be back a little bit later with our final match of the evening.